Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube and Spotify. Man, check this out. On this episode, what we're going to talk about is things you'll never see again. Now, I came to this topic because of the recent news at the time of this recording. They recently announced that pennies, as in the money, will be going away. Like, I don't know where pennies are going or what they're going to do with the pennies, but, you know, using pennies as currency will soon be going away. We heard some years ago that there was a shortage on pennies, which is kind of wild because if you think about it, pennies will always be around. Like, you can go anywhere in America and whatever city that you live in. Do yourself a favor. If you're at work right now, or if you're in your home, or you're at your auntie's house, walk outside. And I'm willing to bet if you walk outside for at least 5 minutes, you know what you will find on the ground? A penny. Because people throw pennies away and pennies fall out of your pocket. You know, you have them in your ashtray, in your car, and pennies are everywhere. So the idea of them not create the United States federal government not creating pennies anymore is mind-boggling to me. That being said, word on the street is that pennies are going away. And at some point, probably sooner than later, we won't have pennies anymore. And so, like, to me, that is not something that I don't think any of us could conceive. Because, you know what, when we were younger, that was the joint. Like, you wanted to have as many pennies as you could, because obviously pennies turn into a dollar. I remember we used to roll pennies and then take them to the bank or what have you. Or, you know, better yet, when you were in school, you used to pitch pennies, for those of you who are old enough to remember pitching pennies. That being said, again, the fact that they're going away is funny and very crazy to me when I think about it. And so that brought me to the conversation that we're going to have today, because there are some things that we'll never see again. And if pennies are one of them, I'm going to give you a couple here on this episode that we'll never see again. And, you know, it's kind of sad that some of them are going away. And here's the thing. Some of what I'm going to tell you, they've already gone away. You just didn't know it. So these are no particular order. First and foremost, Latchkey kids. Shout out to the homie Baylor. BTG for President is the podcast. He did an episode not long ago when he was talking about how he was a latchkey kid. Latchkey kids are long gone. And what I mean by that is, like, especially for those of you who don't know what a latchkey kid was, in the 70s and the 80s and probably somewhere in the 90s, probably faded away. But, you know, kids would go to school, obviously. And then when they would come home, nobody was at home, right? And so if nobody's at your house, the kid has to let themselves in the house because nobody's there. And so what would happen is your mom or your grandma or your auntie would take like a shoestring. They would take a shoestring tied around your neck, and at the end of the shoestring would be a key. That would be the key to your house. They would tie it around your neck, and you had to wear that all day long. And that key would stay around your neck. You could not, you couldn't take it off. You couldn't do anything with it. For some kids, they would tie it on their belt buckle. But the thing about putting it on your belt buckle is, if you went outside for recess, you're playing football, you could easily lose it, right? But here's the thing. If you tie that thing around your neck, and it doesn't have to be tight around your neck, but, you have it tied around your neck, and you just had to make sure that you didn't lose that key, because more often than not, that was the key for you to get in the house. And who knows, that might have been the only key to the house or the apartment. And so kids like Baylor, and shout out to homie Eclectic. He was a latchkey kid as well. And he talked about on his podcast, that he would come home from school and his mom and dad wasn't there, and he would make like gourmet bologna sandwiches, which is nasty, but that's another subject for another day. You don't see latchkey kids anymore. You can go to any elementary school anywhere in the country. You'd be hard pressed to find a latchkey kid, because, kids now have alarm codes and security gates and all kind of stuff like that, security measures. Some kids, they probably have it on their phone. They just type in a little number and the door opens up and they walk into their apartment or their house. So latchkey kids, definitely a thing of the past. It was something that I remember. I was never a latchkey kid because there was always somebody home when I got home, but I had several friends who were latchkey kids. So yeah, shout out to the latchkey kids. Another thing that is probably still around, but we're never going to see it again, and that was the cassette tapes. Man, listen, cassette tapes will always forever be near and dear to my heart, because when I was growing up, that was the first thing that I purchased. I purchased tapes. We had, and I mentioned on the Rap Soul podcast, check that out, shameless plug. While we had records, me and my mom and my dad had records, but my purchases, particularly when I started getting into rap, because it wasn't called hip hop at the time. This is like the early 80s. 82, 83, right around there is when I started listening to rap. And probably like 83, 84 is when I started buying my own tapes. And so you had a cassette tape, and the cassette tape had the music on it. So, and it was cheaper than buying a record or an album. And, cassette tapes were everything, man. And then we got to a point where you could have the boom box with the dual cassette tapes where you could play and record off the radio. Listen, record, pause, play, epic. Some of you don't know what that means, and I'd be here all night trying to tell you what it is, but that was epic. But cassette tapes did it all. And not only could you buy your favorite artists on cassette tapes, we eventually moved to the point where you had these blank cassette tapes. And on those blank cassette tapes, you could make your own slow jams tapes. These were the first playlists for us. I mean, we didn't call them playlists. They were just our tapes. And so, like, those were a lot of fun to have. I still have some cassette tapes at my mom's house. And I would love to play them, but the downside of the death of cassette tapes is that there's absolutely, unequivocally nothing to play them on. But yeah, shout out to the cassette tapes. Another thing we'll never see is the encyclopedia. Now, listen, when I was coming up in the 80s and the 70s, but mostly in the 80s, the encyclopedia was everything, because, like, this is going to make you laugh. The encyclopedia in some households was like a status symbol. Like, if you had an encyclopedia or you had a set of encyclopedias, that meant you had a little bit of money. Like, you could, and the encyclopedias had everything. Any and everything that you wanted to look up, you could find it in the encyclopedia. It was our first Google, and we loved it. And I loved the fact that we had A through Z. Anything you wanted to look up, you could find in the encyclopedia. You could pretty much do a nice book report on something that you found in the encyclopedia. You could get a lot of good meaning and everything like that. And it was different from a dictionary because it went into more detail as far as what you were, whatever you were looking for. But I love the encyclopedia, man. We were fortunate enough that we had some encyclopedias, and they were dope, and they were always a great reference tool for me. But over time, they were big and they were bulky, and you always had to buy them in I guess boxes or whatever. So you had to get a case. So one case would be A through, like, you might get a case A through K, and the other case might be L through Z. So you couldn't have one case and then have the other. So, it was a hustle. And I don't know how much they cost, but based on what I think, they probably weren't, they probably were like $100, which, in 82 was a lot of money. So, yeah, shout out to the encyclopedia. Those are never coming back because, again, we have Google now. Anything that I want to learn, I can find on Google. And, some of us use GPT. I mean, that's another search engine as well. So it's, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who has encyclopedias. What's interesting is, to my right off the screen here, you can't see it, but there's a closet. And in that closet, there are some encyclopedias. I don't know where they came from. I guess they're my wife's family or whatever. But I've never looked through those books ever because I didn't have a need. By the time we got married, Google was around. So it was cool. What else? We'll probably never see. What? Now, here's the thing. The dog catcher. I don't know if the dog catcher is extinct. I just know that I never see a dog catcher anymore. And when I say dog catcher, I'm talking about like Pops on Friday, the movie Friday. Shout out to Pops, John Witherspoon, rest in peace. Yeah, like that, like a guy who would, choke a dog and rough him up as he, so eloquently explained his job title in the movie Friday. But nah, man, dog catchers may still exist. I've never seen a dog catcher. Honestly, I've never seen. As long as I've been living in Atlanta, I've never seen a dog catcher in any neighborhood that I've been in or any neighborhood that I've driven through. Now, again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If you have a dog catcher in your neighborhood or you've seen a dog catcher, let me know. I've never seen a dog catcher. I don't know that they exist anymore. And I'm pretty sure they don't exist in my area of Atlanta. And I'll tell you why. It's because I always see stray dogs. There are literally stray dogs running the streets of Atlanta right now as we speak. But dog catchers, nah, man. I mean, and I get updates and, you get little emails and stuff about, hey, in the neighborhood, hey, there's a loose dog on Jefferson Street and, he's brown and his name is Fluffy. Listen, I don't know. I have yet to see a dog catcher, and I've been living here since 1997. So, go figure. The next one is pretty obvious: payphones. Man, listen, I have a special relationship with payphones, and the reason being is because payphones were that last line of communication. And what I mean by that was, you had to use a payphone, for people to call you, because like I'll go back with my journey with cell phones. Like I was probably, of my friends, I was probably the last one to get a cell phone, right? And so I had a pager, and so you hit me on the hip, shoot me a page, and then so I would keep, because I don't smoke, so I would keep coins, quarters, and dimes and stuff and nickels in my ashtray, and I still do to this day. And so you get a page, and then so you'd have to pull over wherever you were driving or whatever, and then you respond to the page. You call whoever paged you back, right? And it would always be at a payphone. And I remember when payphones were 10 cents, and then they went to 25 cents, and there was an uproar. Man, people lost their damn mind. People were like really mad and complaining about the fact that they didn't want to pay 25 cents for for a payphone. But payphones were cool, man. Payphones were cool. I have no beef with payphones. There is one payphone that I know of, and I don't think that it actually works, but the payphone is actually in someone's yard, and I think they have it as a relic. And it's at this park not too far from my house. If I get a chance, maybe I'll drive by there and take a picture of it. But yeah, payphones don't exist. If you see a payphone, please take a picture, because that is a relic of the past, for real. Speaking of phones, phone books. Man, listen. the phone book was everything back in the day, because that's where you got the information from. And when I say phone books, I mean, like, there was, let me just explain this to those of you who may not have been around back in the day. So, before we had cell phones, everybody's, if you had a public number, your phone was listed in the phone book. And so there was a big thick book in your town or municipality or county or what have you, and they would go by and it would drop them off at everybody's house or everybody's apartment. And so everybody had a phone book. And so if I wanted to, call King Germ from Pod and Saved Our Marriage, if I wanted to call him and I didn't know his number, as long as I knew either his name or his mom's name or his dad's name, first and last, then I could look it up. Unless they had a private number, it was listed in the phone book. And very few people, at least where I'm from, in Florence, South Carolina, very few people had private numbers. Like, that just didn't exist, because you had to pay like an arm and a leg to get a private number. And so, so we would have phone books. And in the phone book, now, let me make the distinction. You had the phone book, and then you had the yellow pages. The yellow pages is where the pages were all yellow, just like that. The yellow pages were dope because that's where you could look up any business. So if I wanted to go to the Regal movie theater, but I didn't know the number and I needed to know what time the movie that I wanted to go see was showing, I'd look it up in the yellow pages, and I'd call the Regal movie theater and say, hey, what time is Spider-Man showing today? That type of thing. Not to be confused with the white pages. The white pages also showed businesses as well. And again, these books were free. They were really, really thick, and they would deliver them to you. And everybody had one. And again, if you knew, so that girl that you were trying to talk to, but you were kind of scared, you didn't even have to ask her for her number. If you knew her mama's name, if you knew her last name, or if you knew her dad's first name and their last name, you could look it up. You could look it up and call. We did that plenty of times in 88. We did it plenty of times. Another thing you'll never see. Well, then here's the thing. They're not as extinct, but they're not as prevalent as you used to see them. And that's cigarette smokers. Like, I know 3 people that smoke cigarettes. Literally. I mean, like, I don't know, like, what happened if they just stopped making cigarettes, but nobody smokes cigarettes anymore. Cigarette smoking used to be a thing. It used to be something that was big. It used to be something that was cool, that was marketed as being fresh, that was marketed as being something dope. Never mind the fact that it could kill you. But yeah, nobody smokes cigarettes anymore. And the people that do smoke cigarettes are pretty much ostracized, because here's the thing. There was a point in time where you could smoke cigarettes in public, wherever, whenever you wanted to. Hell, you could even smoke cigarettes on a plane back in the day. I remember my first flight. There were people there was a smoking section on the plane. And that was like, what, 80, was it 86? I think 86. So yeah, you could smoke on a plane. But now, nah, man, you can't smoke anywhere. I mean, and it's crazy, because we've distanced ourselves so far from cigarette smokers to where if I'm around somebody and I smell cigarette smoke, I'm automatically offended. I'm not offended by weed smoke. I'm offended by cigarette smoke, because I don't smell it a lot. And it's rare for you to be around anywhere. Living here in Georgia, I remember when they passed the bill and they said, no more public smoking in restaurants or anything like that, because you had smoking section. You had a smoking section of a restaurant, and then you had the non-smoking section. And then when you would go to a hotel, you check into your hotel, the hotel has you can get smoking or non-smoking. Are they still doing that? I don't think they're doing that anymore. I could be wrong. I've never booked a hotel room and said, hey, give me the smoking room. And I remember one time, man, a long time ago, this is like 2010. It's like 2010, because I was living and working in Minneapolis, Minnesota, working for Wells Fargo. And I'll never forget this, because you couldn't smoke inside the building. but you could go outside and smoke, and they had smoking sections right outside. And I'll never forget, it was one day we went to work, and there was probably maybe about 8 inches of snow on the ground, and the temperature was a negative 27 degrees. And there were people that would go outside and smoke. I'm like, yo, you really got to be desperate, or you got to really have a bad habit if you have to go outside and smoke a cigarette in negative 27 degree weather. I don't know about you, but I don't want that square that bad. I don't know what it is about cigarettes, but I don't want no parts of a cigarette if I got to go stand in 27 degree weather. The smoke, even if it's only for 2 minutes, I'm not going. It's too cold to be outside. Like, who goes outside? Nobody wants to be outside. So it was just weird to see, but that's what it is, man. Cigarette smokers, we don't see them anymore. I mean, I know that they exist because, like I said, I can think of 3 cigarette smokers that I know offhand, but shout out to Charles. And I told Charles the next time I see him, I'm gonna just knock the cigarette out of his hand. Because Charles, I think Charles has been smoking since he was like 15, and Charles is like 55 now. Another thing, McDonald's playground. Again, shout out to the homie Eclectic. Check out his new podcast, Before Everything Changed. He referenced the other day on one of his episodes about McDonald, and that was a thing. Like, one, it was an event to go to McDonald's with your parents or your mom, because we didn't get McDonald's every day. Like, these kids are way spoiled, and that's a subject for another day. But like, yeah, going to the McDonald's playground, you would go and jump into that I don't know what to call it, like a little play area where it had all of those foam balls and stuff like that. And so you jump in there with the foam balls, and it's like, you don't know what's in that thing. Like, it could be a syringe needle in there. Somebody could have pissed in there. Somebody could have, I don't know, put cocaine in it. Any and everything was, all kind of germs was in that place. And we just went in there and had a ball. I mean, like, they used to have slides and stuff. The McDonald's playground, low key, was almost as fun as the idea of going to McDonald's. But, the playgrounds went away, man. I mean, McDonald's, they changed their whole model and everything. So we'll never see that again. Ever see that again. Another thing we'll never see, and I think me and the homie King Germ were talking about this one day. We don't see anymore is bike ramps. Like, I don't ever recall seeing a bike ramp anytime within the last 10 years. And if you're thinking, okay, well, what do you mean by a bike ramp? A bike ramp is when, back in the day, you had your bike and you would make either it was something that it was either man-made, or it was something that you would just jump over. So your ramp might be, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 feet off the ground, and you ride your bike as fast as you could, and then hit the ramp, and then jump over. Sometimes you would jump over people. And all of this was inspired by the late great Evel Knievel, Daredevil man. Is Evel Knievel? He's dead, right? I think Evel Knievel is no longer with us. Because he was popping in the 70s. And Evel Knievel was pretty old then. But yeah, he was a daredevil. He was a stunt man who did these amazing jumps on his motorcycle. And he is allegedly had broken almost every bone in his body at some point in time in his lifetime from doing these jumps. And so you would see the clips of Evel Knievel doing these jumps and stuff. So you go outside on your bike and you try to duplicate that. And so, like, I don't see any, I rarely see kids riding bikes, but I don't think I've ever seen a kid jump any ramps. I don't think there's been any bike ramps. And what's interesting is there's a bike ramp right down the street, a bike ramp that I used to jump all the time. It was one we kind of made. It was a little hill, but we kind of made it. We kind of sanded it down and, got it ready and everything. Like, and we used to jump our bikes all the time when we were kids. And it's right down the street from my mom's house. And I'll be honest, I actually contemplated, jumping on the bike and riding down there to see what was cracking. But I'm too old for that. What else we'll never see? Oh, we'll never see the big TVs. Remember the big box TVs, like what they used to call the floor models? We'll never see those again. But the great thing about those TVs is that you couldn't steal them. If you broke into somebody's house, you're going to take everything but the TV, because that TV, it would take 4 people to steal that TV. That TV was everything. And what was always interesting about the big TVs is that anytime like the tube went out or the TV just went, it just went out for good, you take a little TV, put it on top of the big TV. The big TV became the TV stand for the little TV. But yeah, nobody makes those TVs anymore. They went from those, the big floor models, to what we used to call the flat screen big back TVs in the 90s, early 2000s. And then you went to the flat screen. So now everybody's got flat screens. So remember when flat screens were a thing? That was a long time ago. But yeah, that's not happening. Nobody's making big ass TVs anymore. That day is long gone. What else? Oh, remember back in the day when you could go to the airport and you didn't have to have a ticket and you could walk up to the gate, no problem, no questions asked or anything. Like your little brother could fly from Kansas City to Miami and you could go pick him up from the gate and meet him at the gate, and you didn't have to wait outside or anything like that. You didn't go through any type of security, any type of checkpoints or anything. Man, that time is never happening again. Obviously, with the events that happened 9/11, we're no longer there. We have to be very diligent in our security of our airwaves, and I get it, our airspace, and that makes sense. I want to be as safe as I can be when in the air, or anybody getting on a plane. But yeah, back in the day, yeah, if I were taking my wife to the airport, I literally could walk with her from the time we walk into the airport all the way through security, all the way to the gate. I could literally watch her plane take off, and then I could go back, and there's no charge, no nothing. Those are some great times. But I mean, again, 9/11, safety, I get it, but that time is never coming back. Oh, you know what else we'll never see again? TV guides. Some of you don't remember the TV guide, but the TV guide was like our Bible for television. Like the TV guide told you everything that was going to happen, and they were never wrong. They told you when your favorite shows were coming on, what time they were going off. And, that was very important, because here's the thing. With the TV guide, it gave you just that. It gave you a guide to let you know when your programming was coming on. Because here's the thing. If you did not see your favorite show when it came on at 8:30 on Thursday night, guess what? You're not going to see it until the summertime, until the summer reruns. It's not happening. There was no DVRs. There was no VCRs back then. That wasn't until like maybe the mid 80s. But like in 77, yeah, you needed that TV guide, bro. You needed to know what time the Jeffersons were coming on. And you couldn't miss that episode. If you did, you were going to have to catch it during the summertime when they ran the reruns. That was just it. But the TV guides were special. As kids, we used to love looking through them. I mean, we almost treated the TV guide like a magazine, to be honest. What else? Oh, man, how can I forget? Arcades at the mall. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't even know if arcades even exist anymore because of the explosion of, games and everything. But the arcades at the mall, I talked about it before in one of the episodes. Like, man, I spent so much time, so much money at the arcade at Magnolia Mall in Florence, South Carolina. And much like many of you, spent countless hours, countless dollars. And that was the thing. Like, you would go to the mall and you wanted to be in the arcade. And I was going to be in the arcade literally until I ran out of money. And then sometimes I would ask people for money just so I could stay in the arcade and play a little longer. So yeah, that time is never coming back, because obviously, with the explosion of the Atari, Nintendo in the 80s, ColecoVision, all of those things. We got those games that we used to play in the arcade. We got those games in our house. And so once you got them in your house, I mean, what was the need for you to go to the arcade to play? Now, granted, we had some battles. Like I thoroughly enjoyed going to the arcade at the mall, going to the Miss Pac-Man game, seeing what the high score was, and then putting money up to see who could beat it. And then I would beat it and then challenge other people to try to beat my score. Because I was dope at that game. But nah, that's never coming back. Never. That's something we'll never see again. I'll give you one more. One thing that we'll never see again, and I think for our sake, we would love to see it happen again, but it's never happening again, and that's gas going under $1. That's never happening again. It's too much money to be made. We're not producing gas the way that we used to. I'm not even going to get into the economy side of gasoline and its prices and its supply and demand. But I do remember, I think the lowest I've seen gas in the modern era was Obama's first term. I'll never forget. I went to the gas station, and I mean, like, this country was like shooting bad. We were down bad, and gas was $1.54. I'll never forget it. And I fueled up my car. It was $1.54, and I said it out loud. I was like, gas will never be this low again. He had just gotten into office. I was like, it'll never be this low again. Now, I do remember when I first moved to Atlanta in 97, there's a gas station on the corner where I live. That gas was 99 cents the day that I moved in. And again, that was 97. So I say the modern era. So I say Obama, his time frame, that's the lowest that I've seen it. It'll never go back. We're at a place now where $2, $3 is pretty much the median for gas. And that's what we're used to paying, and we're comfortable paying that. I don't know that we'll ever change that. Now, I know my homies like Baylor and Dolomite, who live in California and LA, I'm sure they would welcome $3 gas. I'm sure gas probably in LA right now is probably like $8. I told Dolomite, man, listen, if gas ever got over $4 in Atlanta, I'm stealing it. And I'm not laughing. In conclusion, y'all, you see the cover art. It's a penny, and he's got his hand up because, like, it's over for the penny. And unfortunately, for most of the things that I mentioned on this list, it's over for that as well. The one great thing is we can always reminisce about it. And who knows, maybe one day, maybe it'll find its way back. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every week. If you're on YouTube, check us out. Check out the YouTube channel, the 12 Kyle podcast channel. And be sure to also check out our new baby. It is called the Rap Soul Podcast. The Rap Soul Podcast is my music podcast. It's where we break down music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to rap, soul, hip-hop, and R&B. Listen, it's the best music podcast that you've never heard, so make sure that you check it out. If you want to contribute to this podcast financially, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Also, we have merch. Click the link in the description box, and that way you can buy 12 Kyle podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. Ladies and gentlemen, again, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.